Good morning, Ospreys. Good morning, everyone. I am John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And this morning, I had scheduled one of my minefields, and having done one last night, I thought I might do something different this morning. I have had one watch party, what I call a watch party, before, in which we showed a video of Catherine Austin Fitts, and it was very, very popular. I think a lot of people learned a lot. I certainly did, and it stimulated a very good chat and a very good commentary after the show. That is the watch party number one that you can find on my playlist at screamingospreys.com. Screamingospreys.com is the home base of our channel here. We are under attack all the time, like everyone else is, and we need to have a home base. So make sure that you bookmark screamingospreys.com for reference in case anything does happen to our YouTube channel or any of the other partner channels that we've set up courtesy of Andy DeBala's technical knowledge. So, and Andy's producing once again for us this morning. So shout out to Andy and Neighborhood News Hour and their great new show, the Biden Belt and Road Show at noon, Monday through Friday Eastern Time. Well, I used to think, wow, I don't want to be the person that spends 5 minutes making pitches and announcements before getting into content. But I do want you to pay attention to what's happening in general with regard to freedom of speech. And nothing says more than that about that than what I learned this morning, that President Biden now says that President Trump, ex-President Trump, should not get presidential briefings from security because of his, quote, erratic behavior, unquote. Now, that is terrible censorship, and it's so divisive for the country for Biden to say, no, you can't look at the stuff that you've been looking at for the past 4 years. Right? Because here's Trump has been the president. He's seen all the stuff. He knows what's going on. And he might actually be helpful to Biden in a situation where Biden didn't have the context that Trump has. So now we see that Trump is being super muzzled. And that is a kind of a censorship that is really chilling. So I speak out against that. I speak out against anybody that supports exclusion of the former president from the national security briefings as per usual, as has been done ever since the National Security Act of 1947. It's crazy not to participate or to take advantage of the opportunity to have Trump's experience. And of course, they have to do this because it's consistent with their Orange Man Bad theme show. You know, they're going to have Orange Man Bad theme parks when this is over, right? You go and entertain your kids going through the Donald Trump is a clown rides. But right now it's very serious because when we see the Capitol encased in a military compound almost, and our fellow journalists and commentators are getting censored and demonetized, deplatformed. I mean, I can name a dozen of them right now off the top of my head. So how is it that we can reach out to our friends that voted for Biden? Because even though we couldn't get to them before the election, it's still our duty as citizens to try. See what I'm saying? we have to find a way to reach across the aisle to our fellow citizens who voted for Biden and try to bring them back into the framework of individual rights, Bill of Rights, Constitution, rule of law, and away from this tendency toward corporate rule of everything that is the opposite of what the founding fathers wanted. You know, I was reading a quote from Thomas Jefferson just last night where he said, this is Thomas Jefferson, right? Back early, maybe 1800 or so. I don't know. But I have the quote right back in the back. And he said basically that God forbid that we should ever let our government fall into the hands of the aristocracy of corporate entities. He understood that there were corporations that were going to be a threat to our democracy, to our republic, to our system under the Constitution. And what do we see now but the manifestation of his words right before us in the newspaper every day, where the great big corporations are taking over their slices of the economy, and the little folks are getting crowded out, and it's turning it back into that great cartel that the British Empire has always stood for through its British East India Company and through the empire itself. So how can we stop this if we don't start bringing some people in from the other side, from the political other side, right? Well, I don't think we can do it, and that's why I'm reaching out to other folks to say, how can we do it? I don't know how, but I found a great deal of hope when I started following Garland Nixon's work on YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed to it yet, please do. Um, he is a regular commentator on his own channel. It's called Garland Nixon on YouTube. So sign up for that, please, and keep following what he's doing, because I will be making an announcement very soon about a project we'll be doing together in the very near future. So sign up for Garland's YouTube channel. Follow him on Twitter if you're a Twitterer. And if you're not a Twitterer, I think you should be a Twitterer, because that's one place where we can still finally keep in touch with a lot of people. Although, of course, without Mark Kulak there, it's just not the same. I regret uh, the decision of Twitter to drop Mark Kulak's great show, great Housatonic live commentary on Twitter. His knowledge of the situation with regard to the COVID virus and the vaccines and the history of all that is apparently threatening to the powers at Twitter. And so we don't have the benefit of his point of view. I think that's a damn shame, because we need all points of view. We need people who think like Mark Kulak thinks, who spend the time to document what he's saying, who have thorough databases, who have created a website that's very, very useful, by the way. Just go to Housatonic Live, and I think it's just .com, and you'll find, no, it's HousatonicITS.com, and be sure and check into all of his editions there. He has an incredible index of people and places and things, research he's been doing. And of course, you can still watch his show on YouTube, where, don't be confused, he's still live and quite active on YouTube. Well, Now, let's get back to Garland Nixon, who is the subject this morning of what I'm calling my watch party number 2. And why I want to watch this, because I want you to even get a pencil and paper and take notes about what I think he has found. He's found a way to talk to the average liberal-minded person. And he phrases it in the question for lefties that I'm going to ask Andy to play. And as we go through that, we can talk about it in the chat room, and maybe I'll want to stop and make a comment here and there. So that's the plan for this morning. I hope that you gain something from it. And I hope we can make a lot of use of this very, very interesting and experienced and very clear spoken thinker, Garland Nixon.
Hello, Garland here, and plenty to talk about today, as always. Plenty to chat about. Let me adjust my sounds a little bit. And today, one of the things I'd like to talk about, I got a message for the left in America. How's that? So, and it's not just for the left. It's for anyone, but it's a message for lefties. There's a lot of lefties out there that are, I'll put it like this. You got to talk about who the left is. I'm not going to get into that real far today. I'll do a couple minutes on who the left is realistically. But right now in America, the concept of who's left and right has gone to the level of absurdity, right? It's just about, here's what's happened. In America, sadly, people now define the left and the right by two parties, right? People are like, well, if you're on the left, you're in the Democratic Party. If you're on the right, you're in the Republican Party, right? People are defining left and right by parties, which is extremely misleading. I got my message for the left, but I got to talk about the concept of left and right for a second, right? The issue of left and right is determined, like everything else, by policies. Right? What are you in favor of? What policies are you in favor of? What is your basic, what basically, I'll put it like this. Let me give you an example of left and right, how screwed up it is in America. A couple of things about the left traditionally throughout history, what could you tell me about the left? Pro-labor union, right? The left has always been pro-labor union throughout history. Anti-corporate, or at minimum, very suspicious of corporate power. Very suspicious. Why? Because it was pro-labor union, right? And corporate power is going to be the people that labor unions are going to go against. So traditionally, the left has always been pro-labor union. If you go around the world, what are you going to find when you find labor? You're going to find the left. That's a reality, right? In America now, we're in a place in America where the definitions of who's left and who's right have become so absurd and so out of context that you can have someone like Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden. In America, they're people that think they're the left. They're anti-labor union. They are not just pro-corporate. They are totally owned by corporations, right? They are pro-war. Traditionally, all those things are opposed by the left. Let me add one other thing about the Bidens and the Clintons of the world. They despise the left. That's what's so funny. The left being Bernie Sanders and points left, right? They hate them. They can't stand them. They don't like them, right? They don't like people pushing for labor unions. They're owned by corporates. They're owned by Wall Street, right? Now, on the right in America, a right, again, is defined by, oh, you're in the Republican Party, you're on the right. But look at the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Both of them are anti-labor union. Both of them are pro-corporate, pro-Wall Street. There's a different, but what people have to realize when you talk about left and right in the US is there's a different animal here that we are not acknowledging exists. That is but now on the right, they use the word globalism. On the left, they use the word neoliberalism. But what are they talking about? They're talking about a corporate oligarchy who is anti-democratic, right? They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in the sovereignty of particular nations, right? They just simply believe there's no nations. We go around the world, we take anything we want. period. And Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they're all down with it. If you talk about Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer and you talk about left and right, you're missing the boat. You're missing the boat on them. They are green. They ain't left and right. So let me talk to the lefties a little bit. And here's what I got to say. A lot of people on the left in America talk about the distribution of wealth, income inequality. Income inequality is, and it is an issue. Let's face it. In America, what has happened? Even people on the right acknowledge it now. Something's wrong for us anyway. Something's very right for the top 0.01%. Something's very right for them. But for us, something's wrong, right? The way the system is set up now, all of the wealth that is created goes to the top 1%. All of it, top 1, 2, 3%. All wealth created, it goes to them. And it comes from us, out of our pocket. It comes debt and hardship and rent and mortgages and all of those things, that goes to them. They get wealthier. Everybody else goes in the other direction, right? So we're all in the same boat here. And then we discuss the equality or division of the income. Now, there are people who think, well, just leave it alone, it'll happen naturally. Well, the sad thing is, if you leave it alone, that's what we're getting now. We've got a lot of wealthy people, and all they're going to do is game the system. They're going to game the system in the stock market. They're going to game the system on Capitol Hill. They're going to use their money to game the system. That's what the super rich do. That's the real problem with income inequality, is that it feeds on itself. The richer these people get, right, the more money they get, the more power they get to control the government. And now they can persuade the government to write tax laws and policies that allow them to get even richer. And the richer they got, the more money they have to control government. And so they get more money, and then they get richer, and they have even more money to control government. And now what they figured out is, well, now that I control government, I might as well make lots of money off of it. So now they get government contracts, they make a fortune. And the bottom line is they get richer and richer, and everybody else gets poorer and poorer. So let me get to the question. If we talk about income inequality, if we talk about distribution of wealth, who has it, who doesn't, right? There's a question that I think is important that I don't hear anyone on the left talk about. And to me, it's important. Well, you may not care. There's a lot of people that are like, hey, let's care about what's going on in my country at home, but screw the rest of the world, right? Yeah, that comes up to bite you in the butt sooner or later. So let me give the question for the left. If you are concerned about ensuring that everybody gets a fair slice of the pie, right? Here's the question that I ask myself, that I would ask you to put forward to yourself. Whose bodies are baked in the pie? Here's what I mean. Think about the movie Hunger Games, right? In the movie Hunger Games, you had a city, and the people in the city were living really, really, really well, and they're wearing beautiful clothes, and they're going to parties, and they're living great. Outside of the city, you had these other districts, right? You had these other areas, and the people there worked in the mines, and they worked like dogs, and they lived miserable lives. They were so poor they didn't even have color. Everything was gray and black and white, right? They had bright colors in the city. Outside, not many colors. You know you're in trouble when there's no color. It's kind of like the propaganda that we get for other countries. It's like whenever you get a picture of North Korea, gray, black and white. I'm like, wow, that's so evil. They don't even got color there. Everything's gray. It's just gray, right? So that's the way things are. But I think that was an apt analogy for the United States. If you've traveled around the world, if you get particularly to some of the poorer countries or some of the countries that the U.S. has sanctions on where the people are suffering, you realize something. I'm in the city. So if you're on the left and you're talking about, hey, how about a fair slice of the pie? We got to all get a fair slice of the pie. And you're not discussing whose bodies are baked in the pie. You're still not all the way there, because you're talking about fairness in the city, but you're still not saying, how does this city get this money? See, and here's why that's important, because you're looking at what you're concerned with the distribution of money in your country and how the ruling elite class treats you. Here's what you don't understand. The way the ruling elites treat the people in poorer countries, treat people in countries where they're extracting their resources, where they're sanctioning and starving and taking their stuff, right? Okay, you can pretend for I don't know how long that's, okay, that's over there and we're living fat and high on the hog. But sooner or later, it's going to come home to you. At some point, see, once the empire feels threatened, once the U.S. feels threatened, it's going to neutralize any threats. Right now, what's happened is, for those of you who didn't look outside of the country and realize we're arguing over a slice of the pie, and all of these people in these poor countries, their bodies are baked into the pie. Now, those kinds of things are coming home slowly but surely. And you might not believe me, but you will find out the hard way. Right now, what are they passing? Domestic terrorism laws. What do you think that's about? Avril Haines, director of national intelligence, she said, well, ISIS was over there and the threat was over there. Now it's here. That's you. That's you. You know what the threat is? People who are dissatisfied, right? That's you. You're here and you're dissatisfied. Guess what the empire is going to do? Guess what this machine's going to do? It's now going to see you as a problem that needs to be neutralized in one way or another, whether it's putting you in jail, shutting you up, whether it's restricting the things you're allowed to see and read and hear and think and say, right? That's all about neutralizing the threats to the empire, the threats to this machine. So people who are just like, we're America, we're the greatest country in the world, and look at all these nice things we have, and never stopping to think that what we were doing to some of these countries to get this stuff. I remember watching a documentary a while back, and it was about Nigeria. Yeah, that was pretty frightening. Nigeria has tons of oil. They got a lot of oil, should be a rich country. But what happens? But the US and the Western countries have put in they keep in a puppet regime of people who are crooked. And they're going to, what the money that comes in is going to go to that top little 1%. They're going to keep it all. And the rest of the people in Nigeria are going to be poor, the other 99%, right? But the Western countries, you'll hear the US saying, oh, that country over there, a country that isn't under our umbrella, a country that we're not in control of. That country over there, they're not treating their people right. Well, why don't they say that about Nigeria? Why don't they say that about Saudi Arabia? They cut their heads off, cut you to shreds. The U.S. doesn't say that about Bahrain or any of these other monarchies, right? So what happens? The U.S. doesn't have a problem with them. It's quite simple. The U.S., ISIS is not the U.S.'s enemy. You think ISIS is the U.S.'s enemy? ISIS is funded by Saudi Arabia, one of our closest allies. So if ISIS is funded by Saudi Arabia, how can ISIS be our enemy? And let me ask you this. If you ever heard of, look up the Stop Arming Terrorists Act that Tulsi Gabbard put in. You know why she put that in? Because we're arming terrorists, Al-Nusra Front, et cetera, in Syria. The U.S. literally armed, trained, and paid jihadis in Syria to use them as mercenaries. So don't for a minute believe that ISIS is our enemy. How can it be our enemy when we pay them? Look this up. Israel, our ally Israel, admitted that when these ISIS members, these Al-Nusra Front jihadis in Syria, when they were injured in Syria, they were bringing them to Israel and treating them. So is ISIS our enemy? No. Who is our enemy? Countries that say no. Look, Jamal Khashoggi, Saudi Arabia, cut the friggin' guy up with a bone saw. Did the U.S. like, oh, this is terrible? No. Our enemy is not the Nazis, fascists, our enemy? I don't think so. Look at Ukraine. The U.S., same thing. Arm, train. Use the literal Nazis in Ukraine, people who identify themselves as Nazis in Ukraine, who have a legacy of Nazi support, who they literally have a holiday for Stefan Bandera, a guy who was a Nazi sympathizer, worked with the Nazis, killed Jews in Ukraine, and we're supporting it and arming them. You think the Nazis are our enemies? I think not. Our enemy is a country that says no. When we say we want your stuff, when we want your resources, now there's an enemy. We call Maduro. Maduro, he's a dictator. And what is he doing? Is he killing people? No. The people in Venezuela like him. He wins massively in like his party wins 67% of the vote, but he's an enemy. Why? Because he said no. Because the U.S. said we want that oil, and he said no. Right? So you got countries that say no, countries that don't know. That's our enemies. We don't care what you do, how horrible you are, as long as you don't say no. So now my point is, if you are the lefty arguing for income inequality, you're arguing for justice and fairness, right? It's not fair. Why does Jeff Bezos have $1 million and this poor slob over here who works hard? He's a nice guy. He wants to do well. He wants to feed his family. There was a time in America where that guy could go get a job at the steel mill, could go to a job at the car factory, could take care of his family, send his kids to school. That's all everybody wants to do, right? And you're like, hey, this is unfair. And you're right. You're right. Here's the problem, though. Again, you're saying, I want to ensure that everybody gets a fair piece of the pie, but there's Venezuelan, and there's Cuban, and there's Syrian, and there's Libyan, and there's and on, and there's Nigerian bodies baked into the pie. You're cannibalistic. You're eating a pie that's made up of other human beings, and they're suffering around the world. It's like Mockingjay. This is this big city, this big country that's living well. But the truth is, and that's what, it's interesting. It's probably interesting for people on the right too, more so on the left, because people on the right tend to be more into patriotism. I love America, blah, 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 right? And it tends to go bad. And here's what I mean. My mom's not here, but so I use her. My mom passed away years ago, but here 10 years ago to be precise. But here's the way I look at it. This is the way I put it: love for your country, love of anything, right? If my mother was a crackhead, my mother's destroying her life and her whole family's life. She's a crackhead. Am I doing my mother any favor if I say, people, hey, Garland, your mom's a crackhead? No, she's not. I'll punch you. How dare you accuse my mother of being a crackhead? And we all know, everybody knows she's a crackhead. Am I doing her any favor? Can I go say, I love my mother, I'm treating her right? If I simply turn my back and pretend that she's not doing anything wrong, hey, no, my mother, how dare you call her a crackhead? If she's a crackhead, now, if I love my mother and she's a crackhead, what's the best thing I can do? Go talk to her, Mom, you really ought to lay off the pipe here. Hey, you're messing everything up. I can maybe try to take her hey, Mom, let's go for a ride. Hey, what do you know? Look at that. There's a place where people can go who are on crack and maybe stay a couple weeks and get out. What do you think, Mom? Let's walk in here and say hi to this rehab facility. You never know. I just happen to be in the area, right? That's what I could do for my mother. How's your mom doing, Garland? She's a crackhead, but I'm working on her. Right? That would make sense. That's just kind of something I don't get from the right. Maybe people on the right can understand, can explain that to me. I think some of them are getting away from that. But, as I said, I'm trying to understand everybody. And that is people who say, how dare you criticize America? Look, let me tell you something. Let me get a perfect example. You and me are hanging out on a Friday night. We got a brewskis. We're going to a club, a bar, whatever. We're hanging out, right? And I got a booger hanging out of my nose. I want you to tell me, hey, Garland, what? Dude, I'm just trying to say you probably ought to walk in the bathroom. Why? Just walk in and look at the mirror. You'll see. But I don't want to go to the bathroom. Garland, you got a booger in your nose. Whoops. Tell me that. We're going to a big event. Tell me I got a booger in my nose. Don't say to me, hey, I'm good friends with Garland. Yeah, I'd never tell him he had a booger in his nose. Let me know. I don't want to look like an idiot. So if you are truly patriotic, patriotism doesn't mean blind loyalty. Patriotism means you look at your country, you evaluate your country, and if it's doing something wrong, you try to say, you guys, you're doing something wrong. We're doing something wrong. That's patriotism. People say this business about country first, my country first. Well, if your country ain't putting you first, you need to try to fix it. So I say that to the right. To the lefties, I say, look, you're arguing about dispersion of the pie, about income inequality, about an equal distribution of wealth. It's a reasonable discussion, particularly right now. Now that Jeff Bezos is worth $200 billion, 180 billion. Musk is worth 180 billion. And we get, the rest of us get much of nothing. That we have a pandemic and all the money goes to them. It's time to ask some questions. Something is wrong here. And it ain't people. It's not like, hey, if we just change presidents, it's all better. Hey, and people will say this, you know what? Throw the bums out. Get rid of all the members of Congress. If in fact the problem were the people in Congress, all you'd have to do is change the people and it'd fix it. Wall Street, the evil bankers on Wall Street, if the problem was they were evil people, well, then guess what? Eventually, sooner or later, they'd all die. New people would take over the banks and then you'd be good. So if the problem is people, when you exchange the people for new people, the system's fine. But if the problem is the system, then no matter who you put in there, you're going to get the same results, because that's what the system is designed to create. And I always argue this. The problem is the system. The problem is not the people. We put in Reagan, we put in Clinton, we put in Bush, Obama, Trump. And when you look at the SEC, Security and Exchange Commission, when you look throughout the Fed, when you look through all the people that run our money, it's always Goldman Sachs, Citibank, Rothschild's Bank. It's the same people. Excuse me, the same institutions, different people. So we've changed presidents. We've changed people in the Senate. It goes from one party to the other party. All these things change. But the people are coming from the same institutions, aren't they? Because the issue is not the people. You can change out everybody in Congress. As we've seen, you can change out the president. You're going to get very, very similar results with a few little differences. And so therefore, I say we have to think a little bit different. And I argue that if you start thinking a little different, you won't just get caught up in America. And you won't see, I'll put it like this. Let me put it like this. Let me put it a different way, philosophically. Where does the sun end? There's the sun, right? Is it right on the surface, if there is really a surface of a gaseous ball? But wait a minute, you've got like these sunspots that reach out further. How about that? Can we say the sun ends where the last sunspot ends? Or the heat from the sun goes out to planet after planet. Let's see how far the heat goes out. Well, it only goes out to the 8th planet. Okay, we'll say the sun stops where the heat stops. You can arbitrarily at any point say this is where the sun stops. And that doesn't matter. It's just as easy to say the sun ends where its heat stops, or the sun ends where the sunspots stop, the sun ends where the surface is. If there's such thing as a surface on a gaseous ball, we could keep going with that. But you see what I'm saying, right? Okay, so where does the United States end? Does it end in the 48 contiguous states? Or do we have to add Alaska and Hawaii? Wait a minute, American Samoa. What about the colonies? Oh, wait a minute. Let me ask you this. What about the countries like Afghanistan? What about the countries like Iraq, where we've got bases? Couldn't we argue that's part of America? America has military bases. They're protecting those lands from we've conquered them from other people who we think might conquer them as we hold on to them. So where does America end? I don't know. So that's why I say, if you're going to talk about America, think of America not just as the 48 states plus Hawaii and Alaska. Think of America plus all of the countries out there that we affect. Look, Nigeria, Shell is out there. Exxon's in there. They're doing their dirt. The Nigerian people are suffering like hell. 99% of them get nothing. The top 1% get all of them, and that ain't much. So that our oil companies can make a fortune. But here's what's happened. So here's what has happened. There was a time when America was overthrowing these countries, right? Left and right. Look, taking over countries every which way you want. And this money would come in and the people were benefiting from it too. It was wrong, it was bad, but we were still benefiting it. But what's happened now with globalism and neoliberalism? Now, America goes out there, it overthrows a government, it steals the resources, it takes everything it wants, and the top 1% keep that. You see, they keep it all. They don't. We used to get a little piece of the money they were stealing from other countries. Hey, we overthrew Honduras and Guatemala for their banana plantations. Hey, America's going to get we're all getting a little piece of that. Well, guess what? Now nobody gets a little piece of anything but the top 1%. So if you didn't give a crap about the Guatemalans or the Nigerians or whoever before, maybe you should start thinking about it now, because the empire, the things that they used to do overseas, they now do at home. And the fear that they had that the people overseas would get pissed because they were getting screwed by the US empire, now the people at home are getting angry and pissed because the people here are getting screwed by the US empire. Now the people here are waking up saying, well, wait a minute, I mean, hey, it wasn't all that bad when they were screwing the Nigerians and the Guatemalans, the Brazilians and Nicaraguans. We overthrow those countries like it was nothing. But now, hey, wait a minute. This is coming home. The empire is visiting its pain upon me. It's shutting my mouth down, right? And so, if nothing else now, for selfish reasons, if nothing else, Americans should start being concerned with other countries, being concerned, get away from, hey, let's look out for ourselves. Because here's the bottom line. This selfish, rapacious oligarchy that we have, get away from the idea that this is a democracy. Forget it. That this is a republic. No, this is a rapacious oligarchy. Okay. And this rapacious oligarchy, here's the bottom line. America has transformed into something really ugly. And that thing does not think any different of you than it does that Nigerian they're stealing from the oil from, that Guatemalan that we overthrew their country so we could turn a whole country into a friggin' banana plantation, that Venezuelan that we're starving right now with sanctions so we can try to overthrow their country and steal their oil. They don't think anything different of you. So if you don't care about them, at least care about yourself. So someone says, how do you defeat the warmongering oligarchy? Here's the thing about it. I think what has to happen is it's a matter of people waking up from being part of, I'll put it like this. Here's the first thing. You know what has to happen in America? People say we need a third party. We need a second party. We don't need a third party. In order to get a third party, you have to have two parties. We still have people so brainwashed that they think that the Republicans are over here doing this and the Democrats are over here doing that. They make it look like that. It appears that way, right? But every 4 years, you can vote for John McCain or John McCain. That's who you get. No matter who you vote for, every 4 years, you're going to get just some version of John McCain. The interesting is Trump was a bit of a different animal, right? And oh man, they hated Trump. And the main reason they hated Trump is because he didn't know it was an empire. He thought it was a nation, and he tried to run this country like he was running a nation. And look, I'm no Trump fan. Trump, in my opinion, he was very incompetent. He was not competent to do the job. But part of it is he had no idea what the hell he was getting himself into, and he wasn't a politician, and he stepped into this thing with unrealistic goals and his own weaknesses, and the basically the intelligence system, they just hounded him for 4 years. And as I said, he wasn't terribly competent in the first place, and they ran him out the door. But the bottom line is, my point, and I'm going to get ready to get out of here because I don't want to make it much more than 20 minutes. My point is, oh gosh, I'm already at 25. My point is, don't just think about the US and buy into the propaganda as they tell us that this country over here is a dictator. This country over here is up to no good. Our country's falling apart. Literally falling apart. I travel around the world. You go to some of these other countries and you see these beautiful airports, infrastructures, building that when the sun comes this way, on one side, the whole side of the building closes and it takes in heat from the sun and does. You go around the world and you see this beautiful infrastructure, and you come here and this place is falling apart. It's a trash heap. Why? Because they're not putting any money into this country. That would be for you. If they fix the roads, that would be for you. They don't care about you. So they're not putting all this talk, there's going to be infrastructure spending. They ain't fixing the infrastructure. They're putting that money in their pockets. Do not be fooled. If they do infrastructure spending, they're like $1 trillion. Yeah, you know what it'll be? It'll be like $1 trillion over 10 or 15 years, over a decade, which is not enough to even matter. While other countries are steadily building, the only thing we do one thing. We put money in the pockets of the oligarchs and we take it out of yours. And the money that we don't take out of your pocket anymore, they simply create it through magic financing on Wall Street and the Federal Reserve. And how long can that last? So the bottom line is, wake up America, ask yourself about America, ask yourself, are you adequately questioning your own country? Are you just a sycophant believing everything that you're told about every other country? Everybody else is a dictator, everybody else. But remember, the dictators in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, on and on, they ain't dictators because they're our friends. The only dictators that exist are the countries that we have not overthrown. You'll notice something interesting about the dictators around the world, according to the US. The dictators are in countries that we haven't overthrown, that we don't control and that will not give up their resources. Venezuela, Maduro's a dictator. Venezuela, coincidentally, has more oil than any other country in the nation. And what do you know in the world? And what do you know? They're run by a dictator. Hey, I got an idea. Iran, fourth largest oil reserves in the world. What do you know? They're run by a dictator. Saudi Arabia, are they run by a dictator? And we're scared of ISIS, but Saudi Arabia, they not only are they the foundation of ISIS with their Wahhabism, the money for ISIS comes out of Saudi Arabia. Are they dictators? Are they enemies? No, because they're a vassal state, because they do what we want. There are only dictators in countries that we have not yet conquered, and that we have something that we want. Russia, well, of course, they're run by a dictator. Putin, dictator. Venezuela, dictator. Iran, dictator. You starting to see a pattern here? The countries that we hate are run by dictators. And the countries that actually are run by dictators, as long as they say yes, give up their resources and do what the hell we tell them to do, they ain't dictators. And you're just, if you can see that and you buy into the crap that you're handed about other countries, if you can't figure it out by now, you're kind of hopeless, but hopefully you'll wake up sooner or later. At any rate, here's what I'd like everybody to do. I'm out of here, just running off the mouth. Here's what I'd like you to do. I would like you to go to my YouTube channel if you're not already on it, and follow me and subscribe and click the little bell. Believe it or not, I lost like 300 people in one night. I'm supposed to believe that 300 people just arbitrarily I guess they were all together at the same time and said, let's get off of Garland's YouTube channel, huh? No. YouTube, but if you look on, I did a video about the Empire. Oh, I know they didn't like that one. And next thing you know, 300 people are gone. So people are coming back. I would appreciate it if you'd subscribe. If you go to Twitter, follow me on Twitter. My email is garlandn, that's Garland and the letter N @gmail.com. Feel free. I love hearing from people. I answer emails. I really enjoy the questions. And if I get good questions, then oftentimes I will talk about them on my YouTube channel. So thank you very much. Follow me on YouTube. Thanks for being a friend. Follow me on Twitter @Garland Nixon. Peace.
Peace. I'm out of here. I'll finish Garland's sentence for it.
Oh, I see somebody that said, found me from Galloway Moats.
Well, thanks very much, Garland Nixon. And did you see some passion there, folks? Did you see somebody who's thought through these issues very thoroughly, and somebody that can speak to both left and right, and to try to dispel the image that there really is, some real significant difference between the political parties? Even those of us that thought Trump was the answer recognize that the answer is not in either of the political parties anymore. And you could just say two names, McConnell and Pelosi, and that proves the point right there. You can't rely on either political party. And I think Garland Nixon sees that. And so what I'm saying in my context here, and why I chose to do this morning instead of, put one of my own shows up, is because we need people that can talk to the left, to the folks that voted for President Biden. We need to have this discussion, and we need to have it quickly. And we need to get away from this personality conversation about, is President Trump, is he erratic? And what does erratic mean? And how the insanity of what they're doing is driving us apart from one another. So we can't get into that. We have to focus more on building bridges right now, because if we don't build bridges, we're going to lose the whole damn operation. Well, let me have a check on the chat room over here. How'd you guys like that? I'd like to hear from you if you have any comments uh, on what Garland had to say there. And I personally think this is a very, very fruitful thing to do, is to bring him in to our channel here at McDuff Lives. And so many things that I notice about him that I have in common with him. We both grew up in Maryland, for one thing, and you know, had an extensive experience in the legal system. Him as a senior officer in the Maryland Natural Resources Police, and me just trying cases in the local court systems. Garland encourages sharing, and I thank him for his kind permission to do so. I think all of his shows are certainly worth looking at. And as I say, I'm hoping to make an announcement very soon of a collaboration that we are planning together. I really, really excited about that. David Underdown, how are you doing? Missing obvious Trump Resorts International Meyer Lansky mega group connections to Hillary and Pelosi. All the same in my book. Well, maybe he didn't miss them, but maybe he actually hasn't explored that deeply yet, like you have, David. And I think what you can do is to put something up on Twitter that maybe you already have, but I think you have tremendous insight. You're kind of like George Webb in a way, that you can see things faster than most people can. And so I want you to, expand on what you just said. Trump Resorts, Meyer Lansky, Megan, I guess you're going to, yeah, that's fascinating. Um, oh, well, Trump was not stupid. Nevertheless, I think we have to admit that if he was playing 5D chess, he lost the game. That's where I think we have to get real, because if he was really ready for the office of presidency, he would have vetted these people that were around him for 4 years and gotten rid of people like Pompeo, and Bolton, and all of those Justice Department people that were just hemming him in. And how could he possibly think that he could succeed in his program while William Barr was the Attorney General of the United States? Well, he didn't realize, the depth of the ability, the depth of the uh, entrenchment of the powers that be. As Garland said very well, he thought he was going to be president of a nation. He didn't realize that he was actually in the presidency of an empire. And to call it that difference is a simple way to discuss it with people. I still believe we're a nation, but I have to face the fact that in reality, to a lot of the world, it looks like we're an empire. And it's been the case for our whole lives. The ugly American. In Perkins's book, the about you want the bag of money or the bullet in the head? Which one do you want? That's Smedley Butler. We've known this. This is corporate rule. And well, I'm just going to go over my notes, because I did make just a few notes as I was listening, and these are the takeaways that I have. First of all, oligarchic rulers. I've been talking about oligarchy now for days, and it seems that is the name that people are going to understand when we think about, big pharma and, a couple of different big companies in big pharma, and the food distribution, and the seed companies, and oil companies and all that, we can see that as cartels, and those cartels work together to control the entire economy, and that is how the oligarchy rules us, right? So that's point number one. Point number two for me was income inequality. And this point, I think he's emphasizing how people on the left, progressives in particular, are fixated on the idea of income inequality, that everybody should get a fair slice of the pie, as he says. And so to get past that one that's one of the ones that I've really struggled with. I don't know how to get past that particular left-wing uh, mantra that there's inequality, and we have to address that. But where he answers that is his question for the left, or question for lefties, and it's kind of a shocking and grotesque question. And the question is this: whose bodies are baked in the pie? Whose bodies are baked in the pie? And then he expanded upon that, and you understand what he's saying. We see it. It's something that the left doesn't see, is that this prosperity, this life of, you know, 5G and Apple phones and, instant everything and, comforts, this is the proverbial city from those Hunger Games movies. And I didn't see the movies, but I can see the metaphor that he explained, about how, well, there comes a time in your life that you realize, hey, I'm in the city. And then you realize that it's all the people out there in Venezuela, in Africa, and the common people of Saudi Arabia, the common people everywhere that are Bangladesh, Pakistan, everywhere. There is the upper crust elites that are making all the money, and everybody else is just as poor as can be. I've seen it. I've been to South Asia and seen some of the cities there where the majority of the population earns only $2 or $3 a day, and it's exploiting of people all over the world that brings in all this money. But then he goes on to the next point where he says, now it used to be that money was shared in America based upon the corporations being in America, and therefore we get to, process the raw material into steel, for instance, or whatever, but we benefited from it in some way. And now with globalization, that is no longer there, and the people of the United States are no longer competitive, no longer seeing a way to rise, to let their children have a better life than they had. And in fact, their savings are dwindling as they face things like the COVID and other crises that are coming uh, uh, directions. Okay, we're back now. Sorry, I think we had a little internet glitch there. But I was just on one of my rants about explaining how at this point we are all in it together, because this oligarchy has seized control of 95% of our economy. his next point was about patriotism and how he's really critical of the right for being expressing patriotism toward a country that is actually not a nation but an empire and is exploiting people all around the world. And that's an interesting point for discussion. And I think that's something that the left sees in the right, that the right might not like to hear. I don't like to hear that, my patriotism is inappropriate. Because, see, in my heart, the nation still exists under the Constitution. But I find a lot of people that probably would just say, "Oh, the Constitution, that was years ago. We've got other things now, and maybe even cite the UN Declaration of Human Rights." So there's a big difference that we can talk about. Why would you give up what we have and for an unenforceable declaration made by an international body that really doesn't care about us? Well, that's a discussion that we can have. And finally, the other point I took from it was that it's the system, not the people. That the system that we are engaged in is the problem. And I have to agree, because the system has been perverted toward these elites, using the CIA, using their secret funds, and using their secret armies. And that continues as we speak. Once again, I am grateful to Garland Nixon for helping me understand the world a little better. And I hope you all enjoyed it as well. I'll see you tonight with a book reading from Population Control by Jim Marrs.